So the Lord told me to gather all this together regarding the outcome of the second impeachment trial of Trump after the Capitol riot, and he was acquitted. The Lord wanted me to gather all this together because, again, during these kinds of things, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes awry, and it all becomes very strangely weird and a lot of lies.
Okay.
And then everything kind of gets chaos and out of order, and so I started this, what's today? March 16th, 2021.
Tuesday.
I started this right after he was acquitted. Not right after, but sometime right after. And then a whole bunch of other things comes into life that is also just as critical and important, and issues that I had to tend to all those. So this kind of got put off to the wayside. The Lord finally gave me the time to come back to it and finish this up. This is a draft read. So then as I'm going along, I can make corrections and we can get it on the website. Also, I'm not 100% sure if this is an exact order because there's stuff like all over the place. So I'm hoping, as I read it, it'll make sense. And if not, then I'll know if something is quirky.
Okay.
So all this is not what I've written. All this is what I've gathered and posted, gathered and quoted from journalists, news reports, testimonies,
Okay.
all that kind of stuff. So the title is President Donald J. Trump's second impeachment trial for inciting the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot and was acquitted. And the Lord Jesus Christ commands me to gather reports for the sake of truth in perilous times. So starting with quote, the majority of all this is to be quoted. When House Minority Kevin McCarthy, that was the other thing. This was for me to gather, the truths regarding Mitch McConnell and Trump, because there was a lot of weird stuff going on. So it started actually with that. Start gathering the truth regarding McConnell and Trump. Okay, so then as it started with that, then I kind of had to have some prelude stuff, and then as you're talking about McConnell said this, Trump said that, it's like, well, now you have to put that in there, and then now you have to explain what that thing is. So then it kind of grew from there, and now I think it's done.
Okay.
All right, so when House Minority Kevin McCarthy finally reached the president on January 6 and asked him to publicly and forcefully call off the riot, the president initially repeated the falsehood that it was Antifa that had breached the Capitol. McCarthy refuted that claim and told the president that these were Trump supporters. And while the president was in the White House watching the Capitol attack and breach on TV, that's when, according to McCarthy, the president said, "Well, Kevin, I guess these people are more upset about the election than you are." McCarthy responded to Trump by saying, "Who in the F do you think you are talking to?" Republican Congresswoman Herrera Butler said she voted to impeach President Trump and confirmed McCarthy's phone call with the president during the Capitol riot and breach. The revelations have pundits urging the Senate to call witnesses at Trump's trial, but if no witnesses are called, then senators are likely to debate and have their final vote on Saturday, with a 2/3 majority needing to convict. Presuming all 100 senators participate and all 50 Democrats vote to convict, 17 Republicans would have to join them. Daily Beast Opinion wrote, "Damn near every Republican senator has to know two things. First, that this trial of Donald Trump is constitutional, and second, that he is obviously, relentlessly, unconditionally, morally, theologically," what is that word? Epistemologically, psychologically, and plainologically guilty.
Yeah.
They know these things, and yet, as the rest of us know all too well, they're going to acquit him. And we know why. or we think we know why. The commonly stated reason for their behavior is that they're cowards. They're afraid of Trump. They're afraid of all their own extreme base. All that's true, but I say it's worse than that. I say most of them don't even want to buck Trump and the base. They want an extremist, authoritarian party because extremism and authoritarianism are the only ways they can get and hold power. The other thing that this document was to do was to gather, because it was like all about the Constitution. It's against the Constitution to impeach an outgoing president,
Right.
blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So January 12th, this is all 2021. Well, exception of other things. Okay. But January 12th, the House of Representatives passed a non-binding resolution calling on Vice President Mike Pence and President Donald Trump's cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment and remove Trump from office. The vote was 223 to 205 in favor of the non-binding resolution. That's where all this kind of started, was to get Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment and remove Trump.
Right.
The House vote and Pence's response follow last week's attack on the U.S. Capitol building by hundreds of Trump supporters, which Trump is widely seen as having encouraged in a speech immediately preceding the January 6th insurrection. The riot resulted in five deaths and at least 120 arrests for, among other things, the destruction of federal property. Social networks banned Trump's accounts, some cabinet members and staffers resigned, and some businesses have cut ties or dropped their support for legislators who supported Trump. Trump called the actions a witch hunt on January 12th and defended his speech as totally appropriate. The 25th Amendment is of zero risk to me, Trump said during an event in Texas, his first public event since the Capitol attacks. As vice president, only Pence has the power to begin the process of invoking the 25th Amendment to immediately become acting president until the January 20th inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden. Before the vote, nearly 250 Washington lawmakers in the House and Senate from both parties had called for Trump's removal. Pelosi, in a letter to colleagues, called Trump, quote, an imminent threat to democracy and the U.S. Constitution after he repeated lies about the November election he lost and urged supporters at the January 6th Save America rally to march to the Capitol as it began the process of certifying Biden's electoral college win, and told them to, quote, fight much harder and, quote, show strength. The president's speech was riddled with violent imagery and calls to fight harder than before. By contrast, he made only a passing suggestion that the protest should be nonviolent, saying, I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. I didn't get tissue over here. You need anything?
No.
Vice President Mike Pence had not ruled out an effort to invoke the 25th Amendment and wants to preserve the option in case President Donald Trump becomes more unstable, a source close to the vice president says. The source said there is some concern inside Pence's team that there are risks to invoking the 25th Amendment or even to an impeachment process, as Trump could take some sort of rash action putting the nation at risk. This is what makes it a problem when you're trying to get rid of. Then nobody wants to because they're afraid of what he'll do next, so they stay.
Well, partly is because there's a lot of confusion of what can be done, what can't be done, what should be done, how it should be done, when it should be done.
At this point, there isn't. At this point, it's just, Pence, you can invoke the 25th Amendment and get him out. Pence is like, I don't want to do that because I'm concerned he's going to do some sort of rash action putting our nation at risk. So now they're thinking, Pence is saying, he's only got, well, okay, this happened January 6th, and January 20th, Biden is sworn in. So he's feeling we're just going to wait this out, and we're not going to do anything to get rid of Trump.
I know.
As of January 9th, Trump and Pence still have not spoken since the January 6th incursion at the U.S. Capitol that left 5 people dead, including the Capitol police officer. The president has also not made any public comments denouncing death threats that have been posted on social media targeting Pence. Did you get that? Mm-hmm. Pence has finally gotten a glimpse of POTUS's vindictiveness, one source said. Trump put Pence in an impossible position, asking him to overturn the election results during Wednesday's January 6th joint session of Congress. When Pence explained that he could not do that and sent a letter to members of Congress that he would follow the Constitution, Trump used his Wednesday rally to egg on the crowd, telling them to march on Capitol Hill, and said of his Vice President Mike Pence, "I hope you're going to stand up for the good of our Constitution and for the good of our country, and if you're not, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. I will tell you right now, I'm not hearing good stories." Aides to the vice president were outraged that Trump did not check in on Pence on Wednesday as he and his family were fleeing from the mob storming the Capitol. The fracture is the first time that Pence had disagreed with Trump publicly. Invoking the 25th Amendment would require Pence and a majority of the cabinet to vote to remove Trump from office due to his inability to, quote, discharge the powers and duties of his office. An unprecedented step. Trump could dispute their move with a letter to Congress. Where am I? Pence and the cabinet would then have 4 days to dispute him, and Congress would then vote. It requires a 2/3 supermajority, usually 67 senators and 290 House members, to permanently remove him. Sources close to the VP said it was highly unlikely Pence would attempt to invoke the 25th Amendment. The sources said it appeared such an effort would ultimately be unsuccessful. Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer said during a news conference that he and Pelosi tried to call Pence to invoke the amendment to oust Trump from office, but they were put on hold for 25 minutes and then were told he would not come to the phone. A growing number of lawmakers are calling for the president to be removed from office either through impeachment or the 25th Amendment. The calls have come largely from Democrats so far, but at least one congressional Republican representative, Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, has joined in. Republican Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania said he thinks Trump committed impeachable offenses, but the senator, who is not running for re-election in 2022, is not certain attempting to remove the president from office with just a few days left in his term is the right course of action. But in a memo to fellow senators, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell indicated that the earliest the Senate could take up any House-passed articles of impeachment would most likely be right after Trump's term ends, saying that the Senate cannot consider the articles while in recess. Now, the other reason I'm gathering all this is because this is all what was taking place first. They were trying to get Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment before anything else.
Right.
And then if he wasn't going to do that, they were going to proceed with the stuff then that they did proceed with.
Right.
So to bring all this into order, to keep understanding of the truth, which we often seem to forget as a people and nation, families and nation, is what was taking place from the beginning and then throughout. In a memo sent to his caucus on Friday, January 8th, McConnell said the Senate, currently in recess, isn't scheduled to reconvene for full business until January 19th. There are 2 pro forma sessions scheduled for Tuesday. In a memo sent to his caucus on Friday, January 8th, McConnell said the Senate, currently in recess, isn't scheduled to reconvene for full business until January 19th. So, right after the Capitol insurrection, and they confirmed Biden, the incoming president, they went on recess. And they're not scheduled to come back till the day before Biden's inauguration. There are 2 pro forma sessions scheduled for Tuesday and Friday. The chamber would need all 100 senators to agree to take up an impeachment trial during those meetings, an unlikely prospect. CNN reported an impeachment resolution could be introduced Monday, January 11th, the next time the House meets. If the House votes to impeach Trump, a process that likely would be much shorter than the 2019 impeachment proceedings, the issue would then move to the Senate for a trial. Senate impeachment trial could proceed beyond the end of Trump's term in office, by which time Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer would be in charge of the upper chamber after Democrats' 2 wins in Georgia last week. Since Republicans are unlikely to hold a trial before January 20th, Senate Democrats would be able to hold a trial after Trump leaves office once they officially take the majority. The White House urged the House not to move forward with impeachment. As President Trump said, "This is a time for healing and unity as one nation."
What was I saying?
Deputy Press Secretary Judd Deere said, "A politically motivated impeachment against a president with 12 days remaining in his term will only serve to further divide our great country." January 8th, an opinion columnist wrote, so 2 days after the whole insurrection and all this stuff's going on. This is an opinion columnist. "President Donald Trump needs to be removed from office as soon as possible. That his term ends in less than 2 weeks doesn't change this fact. As it stands, there's a good chance that he manages to escape culpability after inciting a mob that attacked a co-equal branch of government. And while Trump finally issued a belated video Thursday night, January 7th, condemning the rioters, this attempt at contrition is no guarantee he won't try the same thing all over again if agitated or worse. Meanwhile, the one body that under the Constitution can definitely kick him out of the White House is scattered to the winds. The lawmakers targeted by Trump's insurrectionist hordes weren't voting on articles of impeachment. Instead, Congress has opted to take its previously scheduled recess next week. The Senate isn't scheduled to resume until the president's last day in office. The House had no votes scheduled as of Thursday, January 14th, and isn't due to reconvene until after President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration. I could understand being rattled by the siege that Trump prompted, especially given that most of the culprits are still walking free. I could also understand wanting to distance yourself from a Capitol building that has been proven insecure until Capitol Police procedures can be changed. But refusing to meet now, in this moment of crisis, is an utter abdication of responsibility. The U.S. elects a president to represent us all. Congress provides a key check on the power of the presidency. Now it appears that one of our last lines of defense against tyranny is AWOL. The arguments usually given for poorly timed congressional recesses are invalid. I appreciate the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, which was January 18th, as much as the next black man, but I've never taken a full week off for it. And the winter holiday season has just ended, January 3rd, giving lawmakers plenty of time to spend with their constituents. There are no bills on the floor to stump for and no elections to campaign in. As ever, the pandemic complicates things. COVID-19 is spiking still. And in the aftermath of Wednesday's insurrection, Representative Jake LaTurner, a freshman Republican from Kansas, learned that he'd tested positive for the virus. LaTurner had objected to Arizona's electoral votes from the House floor, potentially infecting his colleagues, and calling on the lawmakers who've already left Washington to turn around and come back is also a health risk. Although, that just highlights why none of them should have left town in the first place. There can be nothing more important right now.
You talk about a lack of dedication to your job. I mean, The country is in a crisis. There's a major thing happening. And
like hasn't happened
Right.
since 18 whatever.
And everybody who can make a choice or change leaves town.
They went
I mean,
scattered to the winds. They went
That is
AWOL.
I'm just still so angry about all this.
That just is the like.
I mean, all we do is vote these people in, and they just do what they want, whatever they want. They don't.
It's like, well, we
They're not
had a
concerned
recess
about us.
schedule. I mean, we had a recess.
And-
It's like
and I
canceled as of right now.
Right. But see, nobody can
We
stand up.
have an emergency at hand.
Now, Vice President Pence should have said, nobody's leaving. We're going to stay here till this
Mitch
is done.
McConnell should have too.
Well, for his party, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Schumer would have.
Yeah.
Schumer would have been right there saying, "Yeah,
So
nobody's
I
leaving."
just don't get this stuff, and it just makes me so angry. I come from a different background. I do what it takes, no matter how long it takes.
And you sacrifice your time. And
These guys could care less. They're making the money. They've got all the benefits. They don't need anything. So they're not going to lose anything. Nobody's going to take anything away from them.
yeah, although they could have lost some of them could have lost their lives just 2 days before. Gosh. So, he said, so there can be nothing more important right now than protecting America from Trump during his final and most desperate days in office. Thankfully, several Democratic members of the House have begun drafting articles of impeachment. So some Democrats of the House stayed and started getting this going. Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota said that she is working on a draft. Judiciary Committee members Ted Lieu of California, Jamie Raskin of Maryland, and David Cicilline of Rhode Island circulated a draft Thursday that would charge Trump with, quote, abuse of power, highlighting some specific things, for his attempts to overturn the election since November.
A year ago, November.
Huh?
A year ago, November. He's been trying to make this all about him forever.
It was just a few months ago, November. What are you talking about?
No, he really started campaigning a year ago, November. Over
Oh.
a year ago. Yeah, it's been a lot longer than just November.
Got it. And Jerry Nadler of New York, the committee's chair, has urged that articles skip judiciary and head straight for the House floor. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat California, is paying attention. In her weekly news conference, she urged the cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment, whereby Vice President Mike Pence and a majority of the cabinet would vote to strip Trump of his presidential powers. Pelosi said, ask each member of the cabinet, do they stand by these actions? Are they ready to say in the next 13 days this dangerous man can do more harm to our country? Her call echoed sentiments Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat New York, had made earlier in the day. Both warned that impeachment could come if the cabinet doesn't act. Okay, before Pence sent the letter to Pelosi on January 12th, Pence had not made a public statement about his position on using the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from office. Pence has reportedly been on the fence about his actions. The vice president had not ruled out invoking the 25th Amendment, wanting to leave the option open in case Trump becomes unstable. Some of this is other articles saying the same thing, but then more, so it'll overlap. Citing a source close to the vice president, according to the source, Pence has been concerned about Trump's potential behavior if the 25th Amendment or impeachment should occur, potentially leading to actions that may endanger the nation. Pence said invoking the 25th Amendment now would set a terrible precedent. The 25th Amendment pertains to the president's ability to perform the duties of office and what happens in the event that the president can no longer do the job. It empowers the vice president to temporarily assume the powers of the presidency, enabling a smooth transition of power in an emergency. The amendment also enables the president to nominate a vice president if there's a vacancy. The part of the 25th Amendment under discussion generally relates to Section 4, which allows the vice president and a majority of the president's cabinet or a group designated by Congress to declare in writing to the Senate, in writing to the Senate, President pro tempore and House Speaker, that the sitting president is unable to perform the duties of the office. This immediately makes the vice president the acting president. Wikipedia states the 25th Amendment to the United States Constitution deals with presidential succession and disability. It clarifies that the vice president becomes president if the president dies, resigns, or is removed from office, and establishes how a vacancy in the office of the vice president can be filled. It also provides for the temporary transfer of the president's powers and duties to the vice president, either on the initiative of the president alone or on the initiative of the vice president together with a majority of the president's cabinet. In either case, the vice president becomes acting president until the presidential powers and duties are returned to the president. Section 4 states, whenever the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress made by law provide, transmit to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives a written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting President. House Democrats have said they plan to impeach President Donald Trump for incitement of an insurrection. Following a deadly siege on the U.S. Capitol January 6th by a violent mob of the president's supporters. According to McConnell's timeline, there is no way Trump could be removed from office before President-elect Joe Biden is inaugurated on January 20th. Since certifying the election results in the early morning hours of Thursday, January 7th, the Senate is in recess until January 19th and therefore cannot begin impeachment trial proceedings before then, without the unlikely consent of all 100 senators, McConnell said. If the House does send articles of impeachment, the Senate can receive and respond when it returns on January 19th. However, McConnell said the Senate impeachment rules require members of the House to exhibit the articles one day after the Senate says it is prepared to receive them. Without the Senate requesting them early, that would mean January 20th, Inauguration Day. In a draft article of impeachment, House Democrats said President Trump gravely endangered the security of the United States and its institutions of government. He threatened the integrity of the democratic system, interfered with the peaceful transition of power, and imperiled a coordinated branch of government. The White House denounced the possible impeachment in a statement saying, a politically motivated impeachment against a president with 12 days remaining in his term will only serve to further divide our great country. Okay, so they're just going back and forth.
Yep. Nobody's just doing something about it. They're all too chicken.
Well, and then it's all the parameters, and we can't. It's like, well, you can really bust up all those parameters, and you can. They just don't want to.
Right. They're just too chicken. Nobody wants to take it. Nobody wants to take it. What's the word? Accountability to it, and make it happen. We have plenty of people that can do it. The job.
Yeah, but I guess if they're concerned, well, we're going to be breaking the Constitution by doing this, so we can't do it. Then Trump's going to sue us for breaking the Constitution.
There were many scholars that proved that this is not how it was intended to be. You can do this. It's legal.
Well, that was all coming out, but I
mean, where's the person in charge of knowing that stuff?
I know, right?
I mean, we're talking the U.S. government. Somebody's got to know this stuff.
Within.
Yes.
And you would think McConnell, like the leaders, the majority leaders and even the minority leaders should know.
Why?
They should know.
They don't have to be held accountable to all that stuff. We'll look it up when we get to it. They don't need to waste their time knowing it ahead of time.
Yeah, well then when it's like at hand, it's like, yeah, oh, we can.
Yeah, well, it's going to take me more than 13 days to read this thing. That's what they're saying.
So Vice President Pence on Tuesday, January 12th, rebuffed calls from Speaker Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats to invoke the 25th Amendment to remove President Trump from office. Quote, I do not believe such a course of action is the best interest of our nation or consistent with the Constitution, Pence wrote in a letter to Pelosi. Last week, I did not yield to pressure to exert beyond my constitutional authority to determine the outcome of the election, and I will not now yield to efforts in the House of Representatives to play political games at a time so serious in the life of our nation, he added. So now this is all becoming political games. Instead, he argued that it should only be used in instances where the president is incapacitated or has a disability that prevents them from carrying out the duties of the office. Certainly not if he becomes evil.
Or invokes a riot on our own country.
That's what I'm talking about.
You think that's something they should look at? I guess maybe we have to rewrite this now.
Not rewrite, but add.
Well, amend it, yeah.
I urge you and every member of, this is him still saying, I urge you and every member of Congress to avoid actions that would further divide and inflame passions of the moment, Pence wrote. Work with us to lower the temperature and unite our country as we prepare to inaugurate President-elect Joe Biden as the next President of the United States. I pledge to you that I will continue to do my part to work in good faith with the incoming administration to ensure an orderly transition of power. So help me God. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat, California, on Wednesday, January 13th, called President Trump a clear and present danger to America as she made an impassioned appeal to lawmakers to support impeaching him for inciting the violent mob attack on the Capitol 1 week ago. Pelosi said that the impeachment would ensure that the Republic will be safe from this man who was so resolutely determined to tear down the things that we hold dear and that hold us together. She also made a point of calling the mob that rampaged the Capitol in an effort to prevent Congress from ratifying President-elect Joe Biden's Electoral College vote domestic terrorists. Those insurrectionists were not patriots. They were not part of a political base to be catered to and managed. They were domestic terrorists, and justice must prevail, Pelosi said. Yeah. Is the president's war on democracy in keeping with the Constitution? Were his words an insurrectionary mob a high crime and misdemeanor? Do we not have a duty to our oath to do all we constitutionally can to protect our nation and our democracy from the appetites and ambitions of a man who has self-evidently demonstrated that he is a vital threat to liberty, to self-government, and to the rule of law? Our country is divided. We all know that, Pelosi continued. But I know this as well, that we here in this House have a sacred obligation to stand for truth, to stand up for the Constitution, to stand as guardians of the Republic.
Right.
I'm like, whoa, good go Pelosi.
I know, right?
I know many of... What?
It just smells like something's cooking.
This is cooking.
Yeah.
On January 13th, the House voted 232 to 197 to impeach President Trump exactly 1 week after rioters forced lawmakers to flee from the very chamber in which they cast ballots in during the fourth presidential impeachment in U.S. history. The House passed an article charging him with incitement of insurrection for his role in the deadly Capitol attack on January 6th. The House voted to impeach President Trump for a second time in a swift and bipartisan condemnation of the president's role in inciting the riot at the U.S. Capitol. 10 Republicans, including the House's number 3 Republican Liz Cheney of Wyoming, joined all Democrats to impeach Trump for incitement of insurrection and calling for the president to be removed from office and potentially barred from running again. Cheney said a violent mob attacked the U.S. Capitol to obstruct the process of our democracy and stop the counting of presidential electoral votes. This insurrection caused injury, death, and destruction in the most sacred space in our republic. The President of the U.S. summoned his mob, assembled the mob, and lit the flame of his attack. Everything that followed was his doing. None of this would have happened without the President. The President could have immediately and forcefully intervened to stop the violence. He did not. There has never been a greater betrayal by a President of the United States of his office and his oath to the Constitution. I will vote to impeach the President. Some Republicans may have feared for their own safety if they voted for impeachment. said Republican Kinzinger, or Representative Kinzinger, who voted against Trump. Kinzinger told ABC's Powerhouse Politics podcast that some members of his party are likely holding back from voting for impeachment due to fear of highlighting their own participation in supporting the president's false claims of election fraud. In a new op-ed for the Washington Post, he explains to his fellow Republicans why it is so important to hold Trump accountable for his role in the January 6th Capitol riot. Holding an impeachment trial is not political theater or a waste of time, Kinzinger wrote. If the GOP doesn't take a stand, the chaos of the past few months and the past few years could quickly return. The future of our party and our country depends on confronting what happened so it doesn't happen again. Kinzinger called out Republicans who encouraged Trump's dangerous lie that the presidential election was stolen and said the GOP of his youth would never take that road. Trump changed that dynamic, he argued, making the Republican Party one that runs on outrage and the fear of a darker future. Kinzinger said he thinks more Republican voters reject this shift, but many have gone silent because they assume the party's leaders no longer represent them. There is a disturbing reason Republicans in Congress are giving for refusing to break with President Donald Trump. They fear for their lives. I gotta highlight that one.
And okay, what's the difference of holding that position in the world? They should fear for their lives most of the time. If they're going against the people or not doing what the people want. So why are they so afraid of President Trump?
Yeah, he's just got them all under his
I don't
thumb.
get it. Unless he's done some murders somewhere that I don't know about that causes this kind of fear. He's got people locked up in basements. I don't know what's going on.
I know, again, I don't know at what point, and I documented this in something else if I remember right, that he went to all of them and had them swear loyalty to him. And there was a few that said, I swear loyalty to the Constitution and the flag and not a man. And anyone who did not swear loyalty to him, he worked to degrade them, speak more lies about them, ruin their political career, get them fired if they were a hired employee, to defame them so that they won't get reelected. So smear campaigns, and he is he's got lies more than anybody's got lies.
Yeah.
And he just throws them out there.
Right.
And they're now fearful for their careers, their jobs, their families, their lives.
Reputations.
Which is typical of a tyrant, a dictator.
Right.
They just take them out. If you don't bow to me and you don't agree with me and you don't do as I say, then I have power and I'll take you out. So that's what's starting to happen here in our own government, which is shocking.
Yep.
So this was according to Representative Jason Crow, Democrat, Colorado. This is a major reason why more House Republicans aren't voting to impeach Donald Trump in the wake of the attack on the Capitol. The majority of them are paralyzed with fear. I had a lot of conversations with my Republican colleagues, and a couple of them broke down in tears, saying that they are afraid for their lives if they vote for this impeachment. Tim Alberta, Politico's chief political correspondent, found in his own reporting that Crow was right. I know for a fact several members want to impeach, but fear casting that vote could get them or their families murdered, Alberta writes. Numerous House Republicans have received death threats in the past week. This fear has not only affected the impeachment vote. Representative Pete Meyer, Republican, Michigan, has said that he personally knows several House Republicans who wanted to vote to certify Joe Biden's 2020 electoral win, but were afraid for their lives if they chose to do so. So they can't even confirm that Biden has won the election. If they do that, they're fearing for their lives because of Trump and his administration and these Republicans.
You cannot, I don't know. You cannot fear a man like that.
I know, but they are.
Look what it does. It stifles the entire country.
And now he rules and reigns as God.
As God. Mm-hmm. And it just makes our people that we voted in look weaker than we expected. I mean, this is pathetic.
It's scary, sad.
Yeah. That they have no backbone at all to stand up for what is right.
I know.
None at all. That means they just flow in the wind, whatever is, I better save this, I better do that. I mean...
Well, because of fear. Now, again, in all aspects of life, when someone is dominating and ruling either the government or household or business, it's that way in everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, but now Trump is totally taken over the White House.
Yeah.
And is ruling and reigning.
How did he get to that point? How does it get to this point? I don't get it.
There's a bug crawling right there.
It just is amazing to me how this happens.
It is weird. I've wondered the same thing.
I can see it in a small group, a clique, whatever, but not in a government when you've got hundreds of people and they're not shaking in their boots.
I don't know, throughout his entire presidency, where I kept looking back saying there's something wrong. I mean, even from before he even became president, I was like, I'm not voting for him. It's just not right. And I'm not voting for Hillary. So I'm just not voting. And the Lord's like, vote for me in your heart as President King. And I'm like, oh, I can vote for someone. So, but ever since he became president, I had just been watching him say stuff that it's like, that's not right.
Right.
And that's a lie. And then, Pelosi's trying to be like, he didn't do that. We did that during the Obama era. Now it just finished itself out and he just signed it. Finally, got signed. Yeah. And he's like, look what I did. And then we're like, no, you didn't do that. And I had to clean up this whole Obama era and this whole big mess. I was handed over a mess. And sure, you're always going to get a mess from every president that takes over each other's stuff. You got to still work out that mess. But he had a way of speaking all this stuff out with such defiance, and everyone believed him and joined him. And then it was just compounding every week. And then 4 years into it, it's so compounded that they don't even know. They've lost.
I've lost my respect for our government. More so now than ever.
Well, I've actually gained more respect for the Democrats. I'll tell you
that's
this.
Fine.
I'm not a Democrat.
There are a few people.
Just for the record.
Right, there's a few people that I really like.
These Democrats, even before Biden became president, during this COVID thing, these Democrats were like, Trump, help us here. Give us guidance. And what do we do? And they're like, you're on your own. And then he'll say, well, I offered to help you and you didn't take it. And these Democrats have stepped up and have been angry and frustrated, these governors, and have had to work. And then we have Black Lives Matter protest and all hell breaking loose. And these Democrats are not going to deal with that. And Trump is just like walking away from all of it and dismissing all of it as a president and a leader. So I was now, every time Trump is like, the Democrats, and I go in and look at it, and I'm like, no, actually, they were doing their job. And they actually did a really good job. And then you try to take credit for it. And the truth is, you didn't call in this. They did. Governor did. And you can't even, they don't answer to you, the National Guard. They answer to the governor. I mean, now is where I'm starting to be like, you're messed up. But well, everyone, everything he spoke, everyone who believed in and loved Trump, believed everything he said and supported him. And then when you try to speak truth to them, they are like so programmed that there is no talking to them. They are evil, angry, and defiant. So anyway, I do also have high respect for these few Republicans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just
like, trying
yay!
To say that. Mm-hmm.
Oh, then say it.
That's okay. But there are quite a few people that stood up and did what was, or tried to do what was right.
Uh-huh.
and I commend
In
them.
both parties.
Yeah, but
And
there's
those
but
are the
there's
ones I
but the
applaud.
majority wimped out
Yes.
on both sides,
Yes.
and that's the,
No, I wouldn't say so much on both sides.
Well,
No.
not
I'm
the
not in agreement.
Democrats, not
I'm
the
not-
Democrats, but because they had the power behind them of the majority.
No, the Democrats were the minority during Trump's era.
Yes, but as
So
far,
the Democrats, I did not see cowering. The Democrats I saw kept standing up, trying to be. They were speaking the truth, and they were having to then deal with the backlash of Trump
Right.
and his administration.
Right.
And they have to keep going back on all these news reports saying, "No, I said this, I did that, and then Trump did this, and no, this is the truth, and then Trump says this, and that's a lie." So they had to keep going on and defending themselves, and I didn't see the Democrats weakening or cowering. Now during Black Lives Matter, that was a whole nother thing in itself, where they're like, if we show more military or police force, we have more Black Lives Matter protesters coming out, burning down more places because they're protesting against the police. So that was a fiasco. Now, Trump was horrible as a leader during that fiasco.
everything.
Ugh.
He hasn't been a good leader in anything.
He's like, stock market looks good to me. Thumbs up. It's just, what's the stock market? His whole fixation was the money.
And it's like he did nothing about that. It was all based on any event. Every time there was an event that happened, the money would go down, and then it would get better and it would go back up. It had nothing to do with Trump. It was all event based. The people who buy and sell stock are just skittish and scared of every movement that takes place. And it's just, everything is just, everybody is building their lives and their values on sand. And every time it gets a little windy, it starts to move or shift or whatever, and they freak out.
Yeah.
And it's just going, there's no backbone in our country, in our people anymore. There's a few, like that one guy that we like from Illinois.
Kinzinger,
yeah,
and then there was a
he's-
couple other Republicans, and then there's these Democrats. They have been. I mean, even from the first impeachment, after they got done with their impeachment, their testimony, I was like, wow, you guys did a really good job. But then the Republican senators are like, yeah, we're just going to quit him anyway. Doesn't matter what you say.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much work you do. We've already predetermined we're going to quit him. Yeah, you don't have our vote.
Yeah.
But when those Democrats got done, I was like,
Yeah.
you guys did a really good job.
Yeah.
Nice job. And these guys have been strong.
Well,
These guys have been strong, and they have been working to stay strong. And then through all hell breaking loose with the pandemic and Black Lives Matters, I'm just like, whoa.
I just wish their values were better.
I agree. Okay, so some of the Republicans who voted to impeach former President Trump in January are already having their seats challenged. So that's what happens. And their ability to hold onto their place in Congress may be dependent on the moves the former president makes in the next 18 months. 10 Republicans joined Democrats in impeaching Trump in a historic second time, a move that was quickly met with condemnation back in their home states. They've been publicly scolded, pushed to resign, and warned that local organizations will mount a strong push to oust them from office in the primary. So look what happens when you're doing the right thing.
But that's okay. That's the point of doing it. You do it until you can't.
I know. Liz Cheney was once considered the future of the GOP. Now she's fighting to keep her political career alive because of what she said. And she was very bold and very strong with what she said and right on the mark. And now she's fighting to keep her political career alive at that point. After voting to impeach Donald Trump, the highest ranking woman in the House GOP finds herself at risk of losing her leadership post, staring down a pro-Trump primary challenge, and censured by some of her own party back home in Wyoming. The most immediate threat to Cheney, a push by Trump loyalists to oust her as conference chair, has gained momentum inside the House GOP. Others have threatened to boycott future conference meetings if she remains in power. and at least 2 members have privately signaled interest in replacing Cheney as the number 3 Republican. She has proven that she is out of step with the vast majority of our conference and the Republicans across the nation, said freshman Representative Matt Rosendale, Republican, Montana, who is spearheading the resolution calling on Cheney to step down. Yeah, so she's proven that she's out of step with the vast majority of our conference. So they're calling for her to step down. I'm like, no, stand up. Stand.
Right. She's the only one in step.
A lot of people within our conference have a problem with it. Long simmering frustrations with Cheney, once a fast rising star in the GOP, have spiked inside the GOP, especially among its right flank. Members are not only angry with her impeachment vote, but also furious that Cheney announced her position a day ahead, giving Democrats ample time to use her statement in all of their talking points, while also providing cover to the 9 other Republicans who backed impeachment, removing Liz as a conference chair when she did exactly what the leader told all of us to do: vote her conscience. Sends a bad message. Representative Michael McCall, Republican, Texas, the top Republican on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, said in a statement. So they were all told, vote your conscience. And then when you do, and it's not in alignment with supporting Trump, oh, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. You're going to be punished. How dare you vote your conscience?
Right.
Oh, gosh. And I've spoken with many members of our conference who have expressed their support for Liz and her leadership. I have confidence she will remain in her position and she has my support. What is this I put here in parentheses? By Trump and his administration, she is being punished and oppressed for voting what she knows to be true and right to convict for the sake of justice and criminal activity and speech, according to what Trump and his supporters revealed on January 6th. Okay. A couple little side notes here. Marco Rubio, Florida Republican senator, isn't a big fan of the House's decision to impeach former President Donald Trump over the incitement of rioters who overran the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Waste of time. Impeachment isn't about accountability, the senator tweeted.
Really?
It's about demands from
It's like firing the president or firing, a person. How much more accountability can you have? Isn't that the idea of this? This is a bad thing that you just did. So here's what we can do to get you to see that. Yeah. And he calls it that.
Waste of time. Impeachment isn't about accountability.
This guy really knows what he's talking about.
This is who's in charge of stuff. I'm just like, where do these people come from?
They're obviously not people who grew up learning about our government.
Or
they just got a seat.
Truth.
They just got a seat of power and position and prestige and a good paycheck. They don't know anything about government. It's like President Donald Trump. I've never held a seat in the government, but I'm going to run the country.
Because I'm a businessman.
He knows nothing about the government. And he proved it in 4 years.
I know.
And all these people that are backing him, I'd like to know, were they ever in government before this? Where did they get their education? They don't have one.
Well, you can't judge that.
Yes, I can, by what they just wrote and said.
They'd say they have an education.
Then prove it. You would not make a statement like that if you had known the truth of this.
If you had a truth education. It's about, this is what he says, this is what he believes this impeachment thing would be. It's about demands from vengeance from the radical left.
Of course.
Because they always blame the Democrats for everything.
It has nothing to do with all these people that he just incited a riot to.
I know.
And to push through the doors and to break into things and kill people or cause death. It has nothing to do with that.
No.
And by the way, this president has already been impeached once because of his idiot ways of doing things.
Yeah, it's about demands from vengeance from the radical left. This is why everything always goes back to the Democrats' fault. It's always the Democrats' fault. Yeah, it's like, no, it's not. And a new show for the political entertainment industry. That's what this whole impeachment trial would be, according to his views. Now, it's not clear whether Rubio actually believes that or whether he is simply posturing to appeal to the pro-Trump wing of the Republican
Really?
Party
You think?
as he contemplates another fun, I think this is supposed to be run, okay,
Yeah.
run for president in 2024.
Oh, good for him. We get somebody else that doesn't know anything in charge.
Maybe it's a little of both, but either way, he's wrong.
You think?
Does the liberal left loathe Trump? And do they believe the Senate should not only vote to convict him, but also ban him from ever running for federal office again? Absolutely. Is that the same thing as suggesting, as Rubio does, that the reason for the impeachment trial is because of a desire for vengeance from liberals and the media's never-ending desire for drama or something? Nope. What sits at the heart of the effort to decide what to do with Trump isn't vengeance, it's accountability.
Thank you.
But what Rubio is doing is simply irresponsible and the same sort of rhetoric that hatched the mentality of January 6th. Gosh.
Yeah, he could have been up on the podium talking with these other guys out of their butts. Excuse me. Sorry.
This isn't about Democrats or the media. This is about Donald Trump and how a president should act. There we go. Oh.
Don't highlight this. That's from the bad guy, the wrong guy.
Oh, it deserves underline. No, this is someone's commentary about that guy. This is truth. This needs to be underlined. But then this scene needs to underline too, because this is what Rubio's pointing out is this is what it's all about. Underline that, because it's like, this is what they believe. And it's like, seriously? No, that's not it.
No.
Okay, but in 2016, okay, so before Trump was elected, Rubio told Florida voters, "We plan to win." The night before, he lamented in Melbourne that we are now a nation where people hate each other. In Rubio's telling, America is suffering from a disintegration of our culture in which rising frustrations and decreasing inhibitions now threaten the core of democracy. Trump has harnessed it into what is now, as Rubio puts it, a frightening, grotesque, and disturbing development in American politics. Now, this is what Rubio said about Trump 4 years ago, which now, back then, he was on to the truth. Then he becomes deceived and like hypnotized and transfixed and be like, you will support me. You will believe the lie. You will condemn the radical left, and it's all, anything I do, it's all their fault. And he's like, okay.
Yeah, I just don't get it.
It's like they drank the
There
Kool-Aid.
is either money going under the table paying these people off to become stupid, or
I don't know what
it
has happened.
is. I don't either.
So yeah, 4 years ago, Rubio had said regarding Trump has harnessed that our nation, we hate each other, and that Trump has harnessed it into what is now, as Rubio puts it, a frightening, grotesque, and disturbing development in American politics. Now then I've been like, ooh, way to go, Rubio, you're onto something. He said, there's a broader issue in our political culture in this country, and this is what happens when a leading presidential candidate goes around feeding into a narrative of anger and bitterness and frustration. A visibly shaken Rubio told reporters in a press conference after Trump's chaotic Chicago rally. I think we all need to take a step back and ask ourselves, are we contributing to this? Every major institution in our society has failed us, Rubio said. Higher education has failed us. Organized religion has failed us. The media is failing us. Politicians and political parties are failing us. Government is failing us. Every major institution we once relied on are failing us over the last 20 years, and people are frustrated. But through it all, Rubio's made clear that his case was ultimately about one person and one person alone. The left bears responsibility as well, but I am telling you that this boiling point that we have now reached has been fed largely by the fact that we have a front runner in my party who has fed into language that basically justifies physically assaulting people who disagrees with you, Rubio said. So he's talking about Trump.
Yeah.
Republican candidates condemned presidential candidate Donald Trump for fanning the flames of violence at his rallies. Now, this is still back in 2016. Taking a more forceful tack after declining to criticize him over the issue in Thursday's debate. The story reached a terrifying pitch on Friday night as protesters forced Trump to cancel a Chicago rally as scuffles broke out at the venue and in the streets outside. I think a campaign bears responsibility for creating an environment, Texas Senator Ted Cruz told reporters in Illinois Friday night, as networks beamed in live footage of the protest. When a candidate urges supporters to engage in physical violence, to punch people in the face, Trump had said that, the predictable consequence of that is what it escalates, and today is unlikely to be that last such instance. Earlier in the day, Friday, Florida Senator Marco Rubio strongly condemned Trump, saying there were consequences to his words. I would point out there isn't violence at my events. There isn't violence at Ted's events. There isn't violence at Kosich's event. There isn't violence at a Sanders event. There isn't violence at a Clinton event, he told reporters. There's only one presidential candidate who has violence at their events. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican Texas, ripped his Democratic colleagues for moving forward with an impeachment trial against former President Donald Trump, arguing that the move runs contrary to President Biden's call for unity. Cruz held a confirmation hearing for Transportation Secretary nominee Pete Buttigieg, called on Democrats to put aside partisan hatred of Trump and focus on the country's pressing needs. It seems that Senate Democrats, the response they have to that is they want to start the new Congress the very first thing, with a vindictive and punitive impeachment trial, Cruz told reporters. I don't think that reflects the work of all the American people. Here you have Cruz and Rubio, flip-flop. Completely flip-flop. 4 years ago, both of them were having a problem with Trump. 4 years later, both of them are supporting Trump and saying it's all the Democrats. And now this is all just vindictive nature and the work of the Democrats.
It's all about, after 4 years, they think they can run and make it better, and they're going to have Trump on his side and get all his people if he doesn't run.
And yet 4 years ago, with Trump's tactics, they're like, oh my God, his tactics are terrible.
Yeah.
And now 4 years later, they're like, oh, he's great.
Yeah, maybe we'll use those tactics ourselves.
The next step is for the Senate to hold an impeachment trial with its members taking on the role of jurors. But that is not going to happen straight away, as Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell made clear immediately after the House vote on January 13th. Instead, the trial will take place after Mr. Biden is sworn in as the next president. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell office told Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer staff on Wednesday, January 13th, that the GOP will not agree to reconvene the Senate before January 19th to allow an impeachment trial while President Trump is still in office. So while he's still in office, they're gone for the week or more.
I know.
A senior Senate Republican aide confirmed that McConnell's office reached out to Schumer's office to relay the message that Republicans will not agree to a Friday session to enable House Democrats to present an article of impeachment to the Senate while Trump is in office. The memo stated that unless there is unanimous consent from senators, Trump's impeachment trial will not be allowed to begin until 1 p.m. on January 20th, at which time Joe Biden will have been sworn in as president. Quote, it would require the consent of all 100 senators to conduct any business of any kind during the scheduled pro forma sessions prior to January 19th. End quote. The Senate trial would therefore begin after President Trump's term has expired, either 1 hour after its expiration on January 20th or 25 hours after its expiration on January 21st, it states. Schumer on Tuesday, January 12th, disputed that claim. Okay, now Schumer is the Democrat minority. He disputed that claim and said that he and McConnell could agree to reconvene the Senate in an emergency session in the next few days. He says that legislation passed in 2004 allows the Senate majority and minority leaders to reconvene the Senate at any time to respond to emergencies.
Unless you have one that has no backbone at all, or sides in a way that he doesn't want to be a part of this.
I know. He's just like, no, go home.
Yeah.
Okay, hurry up.
Everybody,
Clock.
yeah.
Tick down so we can be like, whoop, midnight. Okay, so sorry we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
See, I told you we couldn't do it. Not enough time. There was legislation passed in 2004 that allows the Senate minority and majority leader to jointly reconvene the Senate in times of emergency. This is a time of emergency, Schumer said. Hello, someone's awake. Yay! Him and Pelosi. And I know Trump and all these Republicans hate, and Trump's supporters and patriots hate Pelosi. And in fact, they want to go in there and have her assassinated. I've asked him to call the Senate back. All he needs is my agreement. I'm still minority leader, he said. McConnell said in a memo circulated to colleagues last week that the Senate will not be able to handle business on the floor until senators are scheduled to return to Washington on January 19th, unless all 100 senators agree to reconvene sooner. Mitch McConnell said in a statement, the House of Representatives has voted to impeach the president. The Senate process will now begin at our first regular meeting following receipt of the article of the House. Given the rules, procedures, and Senate precedents that govern presidential impeachment trials, there is simply no chance that a fair or a serious trial could conclude before President-elect Biden is sworn in next week. The Senate has held 3 presidential impeachment trials. They have lasted 83 days, 37 days, and 21 days, respectively. Okay, so out of the 3,
Yeah.
one was 83 days, one was 37 days, one was 27 days, respectively. Even if the Senate process were to begin this week and move promptly, no final verdict would be reached until after President Trump had left office. This is not a decision I'm making, it is a fact. McConnell, the most powerful Republican in Congress, has said he would not reconvene the chamber currently in recess before its scheduled resumption January 19th, one day before the inauguration. But the chamber's top Democrat, Chuck Schumer, stressed that McConnell could begin a trial immediately if he chose to reconvene for an emergency session. If not, the process could launch after Biden's inauguration, but make no mistake, there will be an impeachment trial in the United States Senate. Schumer, who is on track to become the majority leader once 2 new Democratic senators sworn in and Biden takes office, said in a statement. There will be a vote on convicting the president for high crimes and misdemeanors, and if the president is convicted, there will be a vote on barring him from running again. The looming impeachment trial of outgoing U.S. President Donald Trump could derail Joe Biden's first days in power at a time when he needs Congress to act quickly. The House of Representatives voted to impeach Mr. Trump for a second impeachment. I'm assuming I took out too many words here. I'm trying to not repeat so much, but officially charging him with incitement of insurrection over his conduct in the lead up to and during the Capitol riot. The President-elect Biden himself stated last week that his inauguration on January 20th is the quickest path for any change in the occupant of the presidency. Quote, in light of this reality, I believe it will be best for our nation if Congress and the executive branch spend the next 7 days completely focused on facilitating a safe inauguration and an orderly transfer of power to the incoming Biden administration. President Trump is the first president in U.S. history to be impeached twice. The timing of the trial presents a significant problem for Mr. Biden, who has repeatedly stressed the importance of getting started on his agenda immediately. Specifically, the new president will need the Senate to confirm his appointees and pass a new coronavirus relief package. Usually, impeachment would take precedence in the Senate, meaning the chamber would have to deal with the trial before moving on to any other business. In a statement released after the House vote on Wednesday, Mr. Biden expressed his hope that the Senate could juggle several different responsibilities at once. I hope that the Senate leadership will find a way to deal with their constitutional responsibilities on impeachment while also working on the other urgent business of this nation, he said. If Mr. Trump is convicted this time, the Senate could take another vote to bar him from seeking public office again in the future. That would require a simple majority, meaning the Democrats would no longer need Republican support. President Trump's second impeachment trial will likely have to wait until he's out of office. With just 1 week left in Trump's term, the Senate would have to return early from its recess to hold an impeachment trial, even a protracted one, and vote to remove Trump from office. But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's team confirmed Wednesday, January 13th, that he won't use his emergency powers to do so, meaning the Senate won't return until its scheduled date of January 19th. That's just a day before the inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has decided not to use his position to bring the Senate back into session for an immediate impeachment trial, putting the start date of a trial off by days and throwing the start of Biden's tenure into doubt. McConnell's office confirmed Wednesday, January 13th, that the leader, who is reportedly infuriated with Trump following the MAGA mob that ransacked the Capitol, would not use his special emergency authority to bring colleagues back to consider an impeachment article against Trump.